Hi friends, it's Dr. Isla Fishburne of Kachina K9, and I would like to spend this space sharing with you my why, how I came to create this own living organism, its own living identity of Kachina K9, and the sacred landscape that it is for you to enter into, where we can meet and speak and share and be and receive from our animal friends transition, leading to our sacred grief, leading to soul work, leading to ceremony, the ebb and flow of the ceremony and what it calls. So, from very, very young age, as far as I can remember, I've always had an understanding that nature is alive. I was really fortunate that where my parents lived was at the back of a nature reserve. So I lived in a street with several houses, and on the back of there was this nature reserve that we always nicknamed the Sandhills. Growing up as a kid, I'm like, oh, we're going out to play at the Sandhills. And I would often spend a lot of my time down there on my own. My own isn't just me. I was surrounded by nature. And I would always just address and welcome everything that was in that landscape. To me, as a child, and how I still see it now, is everything is alive. So it wasn't that in that time I didn't receive anything back, but I'd always address the trees and welcome the clouds and welcome the fox that I'd see trotting along in the farmer's field, or the deer. I'd welcome the tadpoles, I'd welcome the ponds, I'd welcome the stones. I would just welcome everything that was down there. Like, hi, hi. Like, even there was, I was crawling up a bit of a bank and I needed support from a tuft of grass or a tree. I'd be like, oh, thank you so much, friend. So I've always considered everything is alive, nature is alive. And I was really fortunate as a child that I always saw a wolf and bear walk with me. Now, they were so real. Physically, I couldn't touch them. I couldn't grab them and do that lovely knucklehead thing that we like to do with our dogs, if they enjoy it. So I couldn't grab them physically, but I was always aware that they were there. They would walk with me. They would be by my bedside when I'd go to sleep. And they were that real, of course, because they are real. They're that real that I assumed everyone could see my wolf and bear, and everyone else had their own wolf and bear. And growing up as a child, every birthday, every Christmas, I would get asked, what would you like for your birthday? What would you like for Christmas? And I would always ask for my wolf and bear to be real, but small enough so that they could go inside my pockets, so that they could come with me everywhere that I went, but that I could feel them. I could really feel them. And that obviously didn't materialize because my parents couldn't get me a real life wolf and bear anyways, but let alone one that was kind of this pocket size. And later on in life, I came to realize that they're two of my power animals that I work with. And during this time, I always had not just a love for nature, but a love for animals. For me, I always wanted a dog, and fortunately, I didn't get one when I was growing up as a child because my parents worked really hard and it wouldn't have been fair for that dog to spend many, many hours on its own. But my parents got me for a birthday, my seventh birthday, a beautiful New Zealand white rabbit called Snowy. He was my best friend. We were inseparable. I just loved him as my first animal friend that was in my life, beyond the closest I could get to my wolf and bear, the closest I could get to wild animals. Oh, he was my absolute best friend, and I loved him. I adored him. I spoke to him. And to me, he's a mammal. He is an animal body. He had four legs. So I'm like, cool, you could be my dog. I can do dog things with you. And so I'd take him down that nature reserve, the Sandhills. Every day I'd get him from school. Probably not quite every day, more so in the spring and summertime. Not so much in the winter time, but we would be inseparable. I would just get in from school, drop my bags off, get changed, grab Snowy, off we go down to the Sandhills. And it was just him and me. He had great recall. He didn't have a lead or anything. I'm just out on adventures with my dear, dear friend Snowy. Now, fortunately, this is a nature reserve, right? So there's lots of other people around and lots of other people that are out largely with their dogs. Fortunately, something didn't happen that many people may expect or assume was going to be happen, where a dog chased Snowy and something quite horrific happened. Fortunately, that didn't happen. There were instances where a dog did see Snowy, and I would just recall him and grab hold of him, or he would hop off somewhere into a thick bush, and the dog, couldn't get to him. So, fortunately, I wasn't to experience that so early on in life. But when I was 8 years old, fortunately, I was off school with a cold. I remember this so vividly. So I was off school with a cold, and Snowy wasn't very well. I went outside into his hutch to get him, and he was just cowered in the corner. And I'm like, oh, I'm a child. I just instinctively, intuitively knew there's something not right with him. Didn't know what. And I took him indoors. I sat in my parents' lounge, and I just held him and held him. I was talking to him. I just held him, held him, held him. And he gave out one blood curdling scream, just one. It sounded like a human screaming, and then he died in my arms. And in that moment, Snowy's gone. Like, my best friend, my world, gone. And I'm 8 years old, and he's only a year old, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this information. I don't know what to do with this shock. And I am soon to be 44 of the recording of this video, and I was 8 years old then. So there is much more topics and conversations around being trauma informed and the effects of trauma and how to process trauma and how to be with these circumstances. There wasn't back then. So it was a there, never mind. You're 8 years old, you'll be fine. Like, you'll get over it. And I didn't really get over it. Now, what happened a couple of days later, and kind of want to add as a footnote here, my parents are gorgeous people. They are loving, caring, they are beautiful, beautiful people. But a couple of days later, my dad was cleaning out Snowy's hutch, and he'd cleaned out his bowl and his water bottle. And I was like, Dad, what are you doing with Snowy's things? And he was like, oh, well, your mum works with someone, and their little girl's got a rabbit now. So wouldn't it be really nice if we gave all of Snowy's belongings to their little girl, so she can have them for her rabbit? And I was like, no, that is, they're Snowy's. You can't do that. They're Snowy's. They're nobody else's. And sadly, that did happen. There is frustrated, actually not frustrated, angry Isla came out as an 8-year-old girl. I remember, I guess my dad must have rang my mum and gone, Isla's really upset. I don't quite know what to do. So there must have been an invitation of like, bring Isla. She can give this lady Snowy's belongings. That's going to be fine. She's going to see how nice it's going to be to do this. And I arrived into the car park where my mum worked, and here's this lady that's walking towards me with a box of milk tray. If anybody knows milk tray, a box of milk tray. And she was like, Isla, thank you so much. We understand how upset you are. And I got these box of chocolates, and I just went, phew. I threw them across the car park and was like, you are not having Snowy's they're Snowy's. They're not anybody else's. And it kind of feels like, a sad Hollywood movie. I mean, it was sad, but I'm then in my dad's truck and just seeing Snowy's things get handed over to this woman and driving away. And I remember I stopped speaking, I don't know how long for, but I was just that distraught. I don't even feel I was angry at that time. Like, I'm not speaking to my parents because I'm angry. I was just like that. Oh, what has happened? And that was the start of what I realised, that death as consciousness, death as a friend, actually, or transition, as our animal friends ask us to refer to it as and call it, or how they refer to it as and call it, and also our grief has kind of been like Pac-Man. It's been knocking behind me all the while, chasing me to be like, hello, we're supposed to be working together, can you turn around and face me? And I didn't know at the time. So then it kind of blends. I'm still around 8, maybe 9 years old. And I am in town with my mum, and I walk out the precinct. Right in front of me there's a main road, and I witness a little boy get run over by a bus and die in front of me. So my first now experience of human death, a human dead body, and I went into shock. I remember going to hospital. I remember there being a conversation around, oh, she's in shock, she'll be fine, take her home, nothing to worry about. So again, there's no information about being trauma informed, just like, there, she's a kid, like kids are robust. And I was horrified. I was really horrified around this concept of death. I was really horrified of what happened with Snowy, so much so that my belief system of fear was that I cannot get another animal because I'm going to get that animal and they're going to live until a year. I'm going to love them so much. They're going to get to a year and then they're going to transition. They're going to leave. And I was so scared, so scared. And it was many years later, my desire, it was like my absolute just desire, my pull to have a dog in my life superseded the fear. I'm like, do you know what? I'm just going to do it anyway. Like it was such a loud calling. So during my time of doing a PhD, when I was studying conservation biology, which is still a connection to what I want to bring forward in this story that I'm sharing, I got my first year Tunkasila, my first dog, my wolf dog, Tunkasila, she transitioned in 2022. So she was shy of 14 years old. Now, when she got to being close to a year old, I was not very good in my belief systems. I was so panicked, I was crying. I remember one day I was at a bus stop going to university and I was crying at the bus stop and this old man was like, are you okay? And I'm like, oh, this just sounds so pathetic and ridiculous and I'm crying. I'm really worried that my dog is gonna die. She's coming to a year old and this is what happened when I was a child. And he was like, oh, it's gonna be absolutely, don't you worry, like that's not gonna happen. And it was almost like spirit had placed that person to be at that queue of the bus stop for me to hear those words. But yeah, Tunkasila transitioned just shy of her 14th birthday. And she took me on this journey about transition and about grief. So whilst Tunkasila and I had this beautiful life together in her physical body, I then experienced my grandfather's transition. So my grandfather had cancer and he wanted to die at home. And we got to a point where it was clear that he was going to transition very soon. And that particular night, I was like, I just know he's going to transition. So I said to my family, look, I'm going to stay up with my granddad all night. I feel he can hear our voice. I feel he isn't conscious, but he's aware of our voice, our words, our support. If we're singing to him, if we're bathing him, he knows. And I'm just gonna stay with him all night and just read. And during the night, he sat up out of bed. Like he was unconscious, but he sat up out of bed, and he was like, pet, that's it's not long to go now." And I was like, "Oh, what do you mean, Grandad?" And he was like, "Well, my grandma and granddad are here. They're waiting for me. There's not long to go." And then he just crashed back down into the bed, unconscious again. And in that moment, I was like, "That what? Ah, don't leave me hanging. Like you can't leave me like that. You never said your mum and dad. You said your grandma and granddad. But who else? Like who else is there? I want to know. I want to know." And it just dropped this curiosity of what is transition? What is happening when we are in the invisible realm in that space so profoundly so? So I was always like that changed something within me of like there's something else and I want to explore this and I want to know more about it. And then a few years later, I was in an abusive marriage. And through that abusive marriage, no, well, yes, through it actually, I fell unwell. I got a burst appendix. I had burst appendix for 5 days, which many years later I did a dieta with, so I did some deep healing around it because I have a lot of scar tissue as a result of that. And what the consciousness of my body and what the consciousness of that burst appendix brought as a message was it was safer for you to die than stay alive. It was safer for you to die than stay alive. And I bawled like a banshee. I was like, because it was true. I was in a space then where I just didn't love myself. I didn't feel I was deserving of love. Like I was unlovable. Like I'm such a worthless piece of whatever. Like, who are you, Isla? Whereas my body's like, you might think that, but we don't. My body is alive. It has its own intelligence. It is sacred. It knows it is sacred. It isn't knows it's connected to spirit, to soul, to unseen. And so it's like, if you feel like that, then fine. We love ourselves more than what you can. So it's safer for you to die than stay alive, because I wouldn't leave that abusive marriage, or certainly I didn't know how at that time. So I was very, very poorly. And that's where I had a near death experience. And it wasn't a, I didn't meet a whole load of people like, Isla, you must go to Earth, and didn't receive anything like that. I just was almost in this river of golden light. But rather than the river moving, I was moving along it. If anyone's seen the Gladiator movie, the first one, when I can't remember his name now because I have George Clooney stuck out. Russell Crowe. When Russell Crowe is in the fields and he's like he's the one that's moving over the fields. That's the only way I can describe it. So I was on this golden river this light, this river of golden light, but I was moving. The river wasn't. And I remember just looking at my body, really, that was illuminated, like it was me, but it was also see-through. And I was like, huh, would you look at this? This is me dying, and wow, it's pretty beautiful. It's pretty peaceful. It's pretty okay. And it was just this pure acceptance of like, oh, this is me dying. Wow, how incredible. And then from whatever way I was traveling, from down, like down on Earth, I heard like Isla, 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 and I remember coming back. And so again, a curiosity of that's peculiar. I want to know more about this. So then, a year later, I was not in a good place. Physically, I'd healed. Emotionally, psychologically, mentally, still in that abusive marriage. And there was a woodland that I visit every day. So again, that connection, not the nature reserve that I had as a child, but every day there was a woodland that I would visit. And again, I would just be like, oh, I'm so surrounded in friends and comfort and, yeah, welcoming. And there was a tree that I would visit every day that, rather than growing like this, it grew like this. So you could sit on it. And it was a little bit like the baby bouncers. I would just sit on it and be like, oh, I'm just getting so much comfort and bouncing on this tree friend. And there was a particular day that I visited my tree friend in this woodland, because I was just like, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to end my life. I just don't know. I don't have an answer. I can't see a way out. I don't know a way out. But I can't live like this anymore. And what also was stopping me was my dear friend Tunkasila. Tunkasila taught me so much about our animal friends, so much in how they are seeing life, so much about how they view life, so much about trauma. And she was a dog that we may label as reactive. And an extension of that for me is she was a dog, she was an animal that really struggled to cope at particular situations in that moment. So her world, she liked to be, these are my friends, why do I need any other friends? This is what makes me feel safe, why would I go to places that don't make me feel safe? And so I was aware that if I ended my life, pretty certain that her life is going to be ended as well. And I'm like, I don't make that call. I don't feel that is my right to make that call. So I didn't know what to do. So I was on this tree, bouncing, getting comfort, crying, like proper crying. And I heard the words, "You are enough." Now, behind the woodland was a farmer's field, and I knew the farmer. And so I was like, oh man, how embarrassing. It's the farmer trying to just be like, oh, let's just say something nice to this woman that's crying. So I turned around expecting to see the farmer, and there was nobody there. And I was like, oh, I definitely heard the words, "You are enough." So immediately, I don't even know what that word is, immediately I went back to crying. And I heard the words again, "You are enough." And I was like, is there somebody there? Like, who? I was sort of getting a little freaked out. And I'm like, it's my tree. It's the tree that I'm bouncing on was like, "You are enough." And again, a little bit like that moment with my grandfather, I was like, there's something else. There's something else that I want to explore. I don't have an answer. I don't know what the answer is, but I know the answer right now is to not terminate myself, to not end my life. And so I continue to have this curiosity around what is transition? What is grief? Our connection to it, and also our connection to it in terms of it bringing us back to our connection with nature, our connection with land, our connection with nature heals, that nature is alive, and that we are part of that landscape. And so, what I realize is that transition, when we experience it from a loved one transitioning, and our grief is romancing us. So, I have this feeling, this way of experiencing, of this curiosity, that I myself am romancing myself back to sacred. I myself am romancing myself back to soul, back to who I truly am, not what I was boxed into through what was taught to me of this is how you should be, this is how you shouldn't be, this is how you need to speak, this is how you shouldn't speak, this is what you should think, this is what you should believe, this is the judgments, the da 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 da, all these things. And we have a deep sorrow with that. We have a deep sorrow of loss. Loss, a form of a transition, because a loss is a loss is a loss. And that deep sorrow for me is the sorrow of our sacred soul that we are, the sorrow of our sacred that we are, of all the times we dismiss it, of all the times we don't listen to it, of all the times we forget it, and our separation from sacred as well, our separation from nature, from the trees, from the waters, from the lands, from the more than human and also the unseen landscapes that our animal friends still live in. They still live in these landscapes of whilst they're in a physical body, they are still running with the fairies and sleeping with the dragons. There's no difference, there's no separation. And we know that as babies, as children, a bit like my wolf and bear, a bit like when I went to the nature reserve and I was speaking to all of nature. We know that. But bit by bit by bit by bit, we get more and more and more separated from our own wild soul that we are, our rugged, trying to be taught that I have to be in this box and live a certain way, but I am the contours of the waters. I am the terrains of the landscapes. I am the shining light of the stars. But all those things we get told are not true, or we don't even get told them anymore. And therefore we get separated from sacred. But who we are is sacred. So what we know is sacred. And what we long for is being with the landscape of sacred again. So we're romancing ourselves back into these landscapes. But this is what grief takes us to. Grief romances us. It entices us in a beautiful way to go, come back. Come, we're here to bring you back to connect with the landscape of sacred. So it's a romancing us actually as a friend, as an ally, to go come and be in this sacred landscape where I reside, as in where grief resides. To know of grief, to hear grief, to meet it as a consciousness of an old friend. That it's not something that we are to fear, that we are to ignore, that we are to not give attention to. It's something that we are to dance with, even when we are fearful, to go, I don't know you. I've been told that I'm to fear you, or to not know how to be with you, or that you're dangerous, you're not a friend, you're an enemy. Whereas all the while, grief is like, I know it's scary. And I know I come or have been told about all these different shapes and ways that I'm supposed to be or can be. But I'm romancing you because grief lives in this terrain of sacred. So it's inviting us to go, we know who you are. And we know that you're hurting. Before a grief, before a transition, we know that you're hurting. But through this transition that brings you into this grief, come and romance yourself back into this sacred landscape, to really know who you are, to meet yourself, to meet sacred, and to remember the sacred that you are, to remember the sacred that I am, to remember the sacred that our animal friends are, and also what they're leading us to. And so many years on, it came to Tunkasila's transition. And I've had dogs before Tunkasila transitioned, and I wasn't quite there in understanding the ceremony. I did some things, but during the time that the tree spoke to me of "you are enough," what I was then realizing is that Tunkasila was visiting me in my dream time. And sometimes that dream time was just beautiful imagery, like we were off running together. Sometimes it would be like a message or some words. And this led me into starting to channel with her. And during the same time, ever since I was a kid, I've always had this beauty, this understanding of respecting nature, of speaking to spirit. So I would also speak my own sacred prayer, as I'm going to call it, just to welcome the day and to speak to nature and to speak to, not that I called it spirit at the time, I don't think, but I know you exist, I know you're around, I'm speaking to you. And so I was ready to really delve deeper into that by going deeper into my shamanic work, my shamanic training, my shamanic teaching, really with a focus of I want to know more about transition, about death. And so I started to learn the process of death walker or psychopomp. Spirit assist, it translates as, is how when someone has transitioned, you can connect to their consciousness to be like, are you okay? Where are you? Would you like some support traveling to the spirit realm, traveling to the invisible realm? And I've done this a fair few times now for humans, and it's just the most beautiful experience for me. Like, such an honor to be able to do that, but also to share information to a loved one that's still on earth. To go, this is what we did, this is what was shared, this is what was received, this is what was shown, this is where your loved one is at. Now, our animal friends will show that to us as well, although what I do find in my experience is that it's very, very rare, even if an animal friend has transitioned in traumatic circumstances, that they for them to need a psychopomp. I often find that animals don't, because they don't define to anything. They're not living their life going, oh, I am this dog and this is the only thing I'm going to be and I have to live to this certain age and oh my goodness, I'm now transitioning. And they have such reverence about it, such connection, such acceptance to go, oh yeah, this happens. Oh, it's happening again. It's happened before. It's happening again. Like, this is the in and out, the breathing in, the breathing out. So they're in a very, very different space of how they live life, how they see transition, and when they transition. For humans, I often find a psychopomp is required, but regardless, it's a really beautiful way to check in on our animal friends to go, how are you? Where are you? And what I love especially with psychopomp, that work that I do, is that I actually work with my grandfather who transitioned and who shared with me that his grandparents, his grandma and granddad, were waiting for him. In the psychopomp work that I do, I work with my grandfather, and I also work with Tunkasila now. She's transitioned, she's in the spirit world. So whilst Tunkasila was in this space of transitioning, so she developed a cancer, which we worked together with for 2 years. But we kind of got to a space where it's clear that she is preparing in a slow way. You know, our animal friends can leave quickly, unexpectedly, or in a slow way. In a slow way of what she wanted to teach me, that she was preparing and already come out of her body. While she was very much in her physical body, there was moments where she's like, yeah, when I'm resting, when I'm asleep, I'm already with those ones in the invisible realm and speaking to them and preparing and what is happening. So I was unsure of how I was going to be. I mean, I'm deep kind of in my own soul work, able to notice when a particular belief system may appear about like, oh, Isla, like, you know, here's you're not good enough again, or why are you deserving of this again? And I'm like, oh, just come on, come here, come and sit down with me. Like, what's all this about? So I'm was really good in that space, and I continued to do the work. But I was unsure of how I was going to be with Tunkasila's transition, because this dear animal brought so much teaching and continues to bring so much teaching to me. You know, the whole start around, are you going to transition when you're a year old and this be the trauma of Snowy all over again? The keeping me alive when I was in an abusive marriage, allowing me to heal, support me as I'm healing when I leave that abusive marriage. And then now it's a transition. So I said to my friends and my family, I'm going to be fine. I'm completely in a different space about death and transition. I work with it, I understand it, I see it in a completely different way. I'm friends with it, but I'm not sure how I'm gonna be when Tunkasila transitions. So just be prepared, guys. It might be that I need to go away and just be on my own for however long. It might be I'm gonna just cry and cry and cry for days. I don't know, but don't worry about me. I'm gonna be fine. And during that time, Tunkasila was really teaching me about the importance of ceremony. And at the same time, I was 8 years into doing ceremonies and also realizing the power of ceremony in our soul work, in our grief work, in our losses, in the pains that we carry that require the ceremony. Because these pains, a little bit like grief as a pain that is romancing us back to sacred, this is where it resides. And this is what the ceremony takes us to. It's like the grief is romancing us, like, I know of this special place, like, come and be in this special place. And that special place is then we meet the grounds of the ceremony and the importance of ceremony. And so I know many people come to me and ask me, like, what do you mean by ceremony? Or what is the importance of ceremony? And I can't describe it. We have to do it to experience it. There's this concept of we learn ceremony by doing ceremony. We understand ceremony and what it offers and what it does by turning up and doing it. We're feeling it, and as we're feeling it, we're entering this sacred ground to go, oh, when did I leave this ground? How long have I left it for? And what happened to me? What happened to me to leave this sacred ground? And wow, actually, how tearful I am to remember all that I am and connected to, and how tearful I am that I was coerced and being taken away from it. And here it is again in these moments. So it's not just the one thing, a ceremony. Oh, I've done a ceremony. It's, that's just the thinking mind. The ceremony is again and again and again and again and again until we are in this space of we are living life as a ceremony, but we're not in ceremony every waking day. We arrange these spaces to go, oh, yeah, do you know what I need? I'm hearing the call of the ceremony. So I'm not going to do it right now because I'm busy with X, Y, and Z, but I'm going to now prepare for the ceremony. And so this is what I find grief does. But at the same time, Tunkasila taught me the importance of ceremony. That what she was sharing with me, almost like a funeral plan for a human, she was sharing with me and talking me through what she wanted for her ceremony, what she wanted to be honoured, what she wanted for her transition. And that's what our animal friends share to me, is that they don't need to be in a body to be alive. And, they do kind of say it quite jokingly. It's so matter-of-factly, like, oh, like, we're still alive. And I was like, guys, this is really hard for us. This is really painful when you leave your physical body. And they're just like, duh, we don't need to be in a body to be alive. And I'm like, thank you for your comedy. Thank you for your humour. Thank you for the sense of being, like, matter-of-fact. We are to be with our grief, but they're like, we're still alive. Still here. And so what they ask for in that sense is that they don't care about age. They don't live from age or data or times or facts or figures. They live from their soul span, which we should be doing and we can do. Where what they ask for is like, we don't care how old we are. That is information for you, for what we bring from our transition to lead you into ceremony. So this can be hard for the thinking mind to acknowledge, to welcome, that there is on some level the transition of our animal friend, because they are continuous, they are infinite, and they know us better than we know ourselves, for what it is we need, for what it is that we are hurting for, what we are hurting from. And they go, this is the way that we are offering you an invitation to be romanced by grief, to enter sacred ground again, to enter these sacred landscapes with our transition. The only way that can come is through our transition and in this way for what is needed. And to begin with, we don't even need to explore that, because we're to be in the rawness of the grief, but also just to hold that of like, what else is there? A little bit like what my grandfather shared when he was dying and saw his grandparents. I'm like, but what else is there? There's a holding of, let's just hold on, what else is there? So she shared with me this importance of ceremony to honour her, what she wanted, to honour her transition, but also then my ceremony, to be with the intensity of my grief, to be with the intensity of my sadness, to be with the intensity of my relationship with Tunkasila, and that now being different. And with that, everything else that was leaving, everything else that was ready to leave. I don't need to carry these pains anymore, these hurts anymore. So I was in a space where I wasn't sure how I was going to be with her transition. And for 2.5 days, I was in ceremony. Now, I'm someone that loves my sleep. I love, like, so my body's like, 10 o'clock, like, why we're not in bed yet? I love my sleep, except when I'm in ceremony. In ceremony, I can just keep on going. So there was a night vigil, there was rest, there was sleeping, but it was all kind of part of the ceremony for 2.5 days. And Tunkasila transitioned, and I was waiting and waiting and waiting for this absolute heartbreak to come, this absolute unconsolable, like, ah, and it didn't come. Now, of course, I was sad. Of course, I was crying, but I was being with it. I was being with the grief, not in my thinking mind, but in the feeling mind of my sacred body, my sacred heart, that has intelligence, that has intuition. I was feeling it of going, what's next? What do I need to do next? What is the unseen asking me to do, telling me, instructing me to, like, do this next, do this next, do this next. And this is so unique and so different and so individual for the circumstance of the person for that moment, that this just comes. It comes because we're in this deep, deep, deep space, but we are connected in that moment to the landscape of sacred, to the sacred landscape of the unseen. And in this ceremonial space that it just comes like, oh, this is coming through now. And so the only way I can describe it is a bit like when we get the hiccups. Our body gets used to doing this, and then the hiccups stop, but our body is kind of like, for a few moments, oh, waiting for that next hiccup to come. That's where I was at. I was waiting for this next hiccup to come. I was waiting for this breakdown. I'm gonna lose it. It's gonna come, and it never did. And that's what made me realize, even though I've been in ceremonies, many, many ceremonies before then, and they're powerful, and I knew the power of the ceremony before I received, I never realized the power of ceremony for a transition until I was in it with Tunkasila. And that was then the instruction she gave me, is you were to create ceremonies for our transition, to teach these ways that we're sacred, that we don't care how old we are, we're not in this space of attachments. They're living a very, very different space that, again, we used to live in that space. But through their transition, all they ask for is be with us and make it something sacred. Be with us to honor who we are and our transition. Create a ceremony for our transition. And know that your grief is sacred, and it's romancing you back to yourself. You are in a relationship where you're romancing yourself back to self. The grief is romancing you back to these landscapes of sacred where the grief resides, where the grief's like, oh, you need to be in my town, like, come, let me show you. And that comes when we also meet the ceremony and are in the power of the ceremony. That does something. That we realize how much more that we are. We realize how sacred we are, and we realize our connection to these sacred landscapes that are there to speak with us, that are there to heal us, that are there inviting us to go, you are part of us. You are family, but you've been separated, and we need you back in these sacred landscapes to meet us, to converse with us, to dance with us, to sing with us, to drum with us, to cry with us in these spaces that are leading us back to ceremony. And a few years ago, this is one of the messages that I got from the animal people, from their collective consciousness, I suppose, of these words: return to ceremony, return to ceremony, return to ceremony. And that's kind of what it means, a return to sacred. That we are the only life form that has been separated from sacred, separated from soul. Nothing else has been. Our animal friends, we may try to do so by the irony of projecting our own belief systems onto them, by the irony of us not being able to see until we're ready to see it, the oppressive systems that we have been placed into when we were growing up in all these different ways, that we then try and put on our animal friends. And they're like, okay, we'll listen to that in some ways, but they're still, I don't have a belief system. I don't have an attachment. I don't have a label. I don't want to be anything else. I'm not wanting to be anything else. I'm not wishing I was something else. So they're leading us still back into know who you are and the sacred and the divine that you are, and that you are already perfect. But come and meet us again in these sacred spaces and your connection to the landscape of sacred, these sacred landscapes. And for me, that is the medicine of what grief is as an old, old, old friend. We are romancing ourselves, and grief is like, let me help you on this. Let me take you, let me romance you. Let's go on a date to these sacred grounds where we can be with the conscious of our grief. And then, whilst we're there, okay, let me be in a ceremony with my grief, with that loss, with those pains, with those hurts. Because that is the invitation that our animal friend is inviting us to through their transition, that we have honoured them, that we have heard from them of, what do you want by way of ceremony and to be honoured for your transition? And we will do that because we love you and we see you and we are grateful to you. And we are grateful in a way that we don't understand and might be scary and is painful. But this lasting sacred medicine that you're offering us when their transition comes, because they are, it's like they're the blind date. They're the host. If anybody knows blind date, like they're like Cilla Black. They're the host to go, here, we're bringing grief to you as an ally that is part of our circle. We know it so well, you know it so well, to romance you back to these landscapes of sacred. So you know that our connection is eternal and infinite. And also we can drop into these spaces of ceremony to remember who we are and to feel and notice and be with not just the pain of their transition, not just the pain of our grief, but actually that this is it's like a ball of wool all knotted up and tied up. That grief is grief is grief, pain is pain is pain. It's all the pains, it's all the wounds, it's all the grief that we carry all bundled into this knotted ball of wool. And so when we enter the ceremony, we're like, oh, this is this bit of the ball of wool that is to be pulled apart and that knot's going to come out. And okay, the ceremony is ended, but the ceremony hasn't. It's a continuation. The ceremony is ended for now. I go back to my everyday working, being a wife, being a man, being a husband, being a guardian, being whatever it may be. Yeah, the call for ceremony. Another pain point has revealed itself that is asking to be romanced. We be with that in all these ways that we can do, very much by giving space for half an hour here, half an hour there, but also knowing that where that shift is really going to come is the power of the ceremony. And we are ceremonial beings by nature. We know how to do ceremony. Like, we are sacred tribal beings in our bones, in our DNA, in our blood, in the deep, 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 deep core of all of our ancestors, not just in our blood line, but in our soul and spirit lines of all the things that we have been. And you know they're there. That's the only thing I can tell you. Only twice have I seen it with my eyes open, and it was the most profound experience. Because normally when I am seeing and receiving, my eyes have to be closed and I have to be in a very deep space. But it's infinite. Those that are in circle, those that are cheering us on, like, come on, they're there. They are absolutely there. And we get to experience that in the ceremony. But the intensity of the ceremony, the dedication that we give it, the point of like, oh, I literally have nothing left in me. I'm going to keep going just for a little bit more, it does something. It creates something and allows us to be with that wound, with that pain, with that grief in a dance, in a medicine way, as I call it, that goes, something different has now happened. Something different has now happened. And it is okay. And I still don't know, and I still don't have the answers, but it is okay. And I know who I am, and I will frequent sacred, and I will return to soul, and I will see my animal friends transition and my grief as sacred, that are going, hey, we are here, we love you, we want you to stop hurting, we're asking you to romance yourself back to these landscapes of sacred that we know so well, and that our grief can lead us to by romancing us back to those spaces in the landscape where grief resides. So thank you so much for listening. I am here. I just really wanted to share my story of how I got here, my absolute love, which is a peculiar word to put with transition and grief, but my absolute love of taking you into these spaces and sharing it with you and hearing you and being with it together. So I'm sending you and your animal friends so much love, many blessings, and I look forward to being in whatever space we are to meet and be in. Thank you.